What we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about some research that our company did. It wound up last year. It's actually going to be officially released next week to the media, called The Science of Wow, where we wanted to take a look at what are the components, how do we drive that, how do we get that message to people consistently. So we're going to spend some time talking about that today. But I guess the very first question we have to ask is this: who cares? Like, fundamentally, is customer service important? Is it something that drives our business? And it's a really valid question because, honestly, 20 years ago, when I first started doing this, customer service was considered a soft skill. It was something when we do training, it fell into that bucket of nice to haves, not a bucket of need to have. Right? That's where it fell now. But does it matter? Is it important now? Well, absolutely. It's important for a couple of reasons. And I want you to think, now I'm looking around the room, I think most of you have been in business for a while, for more than a few years, I'm thinking. So have you noticed that the world's changed a little bit in the last few years? The last 5 years, last 10 years, last 15 years? It's dramatic, isn't it? You know, back when you think back to the early 90s, starting a business, having a business was a lot more simple back then, wasn't it? I like to draw the analogy of fishing. So basically, you decided what you wanted to fish for. You picked out the bait that you wanted to have. You found that perfect spot where you knew the fish were going to be, and then you just kind of parked there, you threw your line out, and you waited for people to bite. Pretty simple. That's what business was all about. It's pretty simple. It was about location. It was about your product. Right? It was about being out there at the right time. That's what it was all about. But the world's changed now. The world's changed in almost every industry. Not so much in this respect in your industry, but it's still changed because that doesn't exist anymore. Now it looks more like that. When you think about it, most products, most services that you purchase as a customer, you can get from 1,000 different places, and you can get them for the same price. You can get them for the same convenience factor, so that store that used to be just around the corner from you, that was so convenient, is it really that much more convenient than Amazon.com, where you can order it and have it delivered to you within 2 days? When you think about most industries, when it comes to customer service, when it comes to success in an industry, most industries used to talk about location. In a physical world, they talk about location being very important. Well, most industries now, their biggest competitor's location their address begins with www. When you think about how the world has changed so profoundly. But then the question becomes, so the world's changed, so what? Is customer service really something that drives business? Is it something that creates business? Is it something that plugs holes? Well, the evidence is overwhelming. I pulled out just a few statistics. I don't want to share tons of them with you, but these are just some from the last few years. Consumer Reports identified that 64% of people walked out of a store last year because of bad service. How many of you have walked out of a store because of bad service? So I think we can all relate to that. 86% of people will pay more for a better customer experience. That was done by our company back in 2005, and again by Right Now Industries 2 years ago. After a positive experience, 69% of people will recommend the company to others, while 50% will use the business more frequently. So there's a good argument right there for customer experience. American Express, every year they do a study on customer experience. So this is from the 2013 study. Over half of customers spent more with the company because of a history of positive customer experience. Forrester identified that 73% of people trust recommendations from friends and family, while only 19% trust advertising. And yet, how many companies spend more money on improving their customer experience than they do on their advertising and marketing? When you think about it, where does your business come from in today's world? Banks with the highest customer satisfaction experienced an annual profit growth of 129% between 2006 and 2008. That's from J.D. Power. And then the last one, the maybe scary one, was, and that number's wrong, by the way. Now that I realize that should be 29% of consumers purchase from a competitor following a poor customer experience, 29%, immediately following it. So yeah, so customer service is part of our conversation. Customer service now is the most relevant driver in business, isn't it? When you think about it, it's the most relevant driver in business. And the thing is it's not a differentiator anymore. Being good is not something that differentiates you, because I can get good anywhere. It's the price of admission. Organizations that have substandard or just good or mediocre customer service are slowly going by the wayside, aren't they? And we've all seen them. We're all watching it. I'm going to be able to demonstrate to you why retail, and we've all heard of the closings, the things that are going on, why retail is struggling so much, why some types of industries are struggling so much in being successful. But that's a big part of it. When I talk about customer service and customer experience, and just because I wanted to sort of go into this, I want to sort of make sure I differentiate what they are. Customer experience, when you think of that global experience you have with an organization, it really comes from 4 different places. It comes from, a company's policies. Are they customer-friendly policies? Are there, what are their practices? Do they have good hours? Do they have good refund policies? Those types of things, refund practices. Their processes, are they easy to do business with? How easy are you to do business with, or does a customer really have to work to want to do business with you? And then the last one, of course, is people, and people is the customer service side of it. Those are the face-to-face or virtual interactions that we have with people. What the research has told us, and I hope this will come clear shortly, is that this section right here, the customer service, the people section, is by far and away the greatest driver of conversations. It's the greatest driver of loyalty. It's the greatest driver of plugging holes to keep people from churning from your clubs. How important is churn right now for you? We have different clubs, different walks of life, but how many of you right now have some degree of concern of the member losses that you have? It's big, isn't it? It's important. So customer service is all about that. So just with your experience, over the last 15 years, do you believe, how many of you believe, just a show of hands, how many of you believe that customer service over the last 15 years has gotten worse? How many of you think it's gotten worse? Looks like most of you, about 80%. How many think it's gotten better? Anybody think it's gotten better? One? Couple? Anybody think it's just not changed? It's pretty much the same, kind of. Few of you. The rest of you have no arms. That's okay. That's fine. We're okay with that. How about customer experience? What if we look at that global thing? So that the customer experience, the policies, the practices, the processes the companies have, and the service all combined, with the exception of the conservice, has that gotten better or worse? How many of you think that's gotten worse? Few of you? How many of you think it's gotten better? Few more? And the rest of you think it hasn't changed at all? Is that fair? Okay. Fair enough. Well, it does, to a certain degree. Here's the interesting thing, though, is when you look, when you examine it, when you do an assessment, an analysis of it, here's what we learn, is that customer experience and customer service have risen, and they haven't just risen a little bit, they've risen dramatically over the last 15 years. Hard to imagine, isn't it? Let me show you how we break this down. Let's start off by taking a look at our universe. We take our world into the physical world, so that's the world that most of us live in, right? Those are the face-to-face, people-type operations. And then the virtual world. The virtual world is, as you know, the telephone, that's internet. Those are live chats. Those are automated type systems. So we'll say the physical world and the virtual world. Those are the 2 kinds of ways that customers touch us. And then let's break that down into operations and service. So what I've done is I've just stripped customer service away from those 4 little bubbles we looked at earlier. Does that make sense? So operations, that's the policies, the practices, and the processes that we run. And let's take a look at each one of these quadrants. Let's start with the virtual world. Has the operations, has customer experience improved in the virtual world in their operations? 1,000%. How many of you 15 years ago were comfortable putting your credit card on the internet? Not many. Not many of us when you think about it. Do you know what? 16 years ago, none of you ordered anything from Amazon.com because it didn't exist. It's crazy. When you think of how seamless things have become in the virtual world, how incredibly fast and efficient things are in the virtual world, it's night and day. It used to be, back in the olden days, somebody mentioned Air Canada, it used to be in the olden days, and by the olden days, I mean not that long ago, that if you booked an airline ticket, you'd have to pick up the phone, you'd have to call somebody, and then you'd have to wait, what, a week or two to have your ticket delivered to your mailbox, and then you could fly. That whole idea of a last minute, booking it for a flight tomorrow on the internet, that didn't exist. It hasn't existed for that long when you think about it. So that's improved dramatically in the virtual world. Customer service in the virtual world, how's that improved? 100%, 1,000%. And again, when you look at the stream of what the virtual world was, so back in the 90s, say, for example, the early 90s, the virtual world really was telephone, wasn't it? It was telephone. It wasn't tech support. There was nothing to support with tech support. It was call centers that were Sears Canada. You're going to deal with department stores. You're going to call your utility. You're going to call Bell Canada. You're going to call one of those types of organizations. And back then, it wasn't that bad. But as things started to explode, in 1995 was kind of when things started to explode, and all of a sudden we started to get into a world where we needed more tech support because we all had computers and none of us knew how to make them work, and they are always breaking down. And all of a sudden the customer experience did a nosedive, a huge nosedive, for a variety of reasons. One of the biggest was that in order to sustain that level of customer service, organizations had to begin outsourcing. So they outsourced to places like India, to places like the Philippines, and they did it badly. They outsourced it to people that didn't know anything about the products. They had no authority to make any decisions whatsoever on those products. They had no knowledge bases in their computers to be able to deal with things other than the very, very basic things they dealt. The frustration levels were colossal, and I'm sure most of you remember that stage. Now it's changed. When you think about it, now it's changed. Has anybody had to deal with a technical issue with your computer, and that person can actually go into your computer? They just log into your computer and they fix it themselves. You don't even have to do it anymore. How cool is that? Now, the people that work in call centers, the people that work in those environments, they have knowledge bases that they can, and very, very complex, very efficient knowledge bases so that when you ask a question, they can type it in, they can look at it and do very instant diagnostics. They have empowerment. If you ever have a challenge or an issue with Amazon.com, right, you get sent the wrong book, or with Chapters, Indigo, you get sent the wrong product, the wrong book, and you call them up and say, hey, you sent me the wrong book. You know what they do? They say, oh man, I'm really sorry about that. That shouldn't have happened. I'm going to put the proper book in for you right now. I'm going to put it in for express delivery. You'll get it tomorrow or the next day. Not going to charge you for that. And by the way, we're going to refund the money for the book that you already did get because you didn't want that book in the first place. So now you got 2 books. You paid nothing for it. And it happened like that. And you don't have to get escalated to a supervisor, to a manager, to a vice president. That happens right on the front line, and it happens instantly. Folks, that didn't happen 10 years ago, did it? Customer service has improved dramatically in the virtual world. Then we look at the physical world, and you say, from an operational point of view, have things improved? Absolutely it has. 100%. Have any of you been to the dentist in the last couple of years? Have you noticed a bit of a change? I remember my dentist, my former dentist, he was around before teeth were invented. So he's been around for a long time. And I remember that you'd sit in the chair, they have to do an x-ray. First they put that big lead line thing on you and they jam the thing that looks like an end of a nuclear warhead into your face like that. And then the assistant says, don't worry, this is perfectly safe. And then she goes and runs behind the lead-lined wall, right, that one. And then they take a picture, and you wait, 15 minutes, 20 minutes for it to be developed. You all remember? And then you get this thing that's the size of a slide, right? And it's like, here's your tooth, right? You get that thing. They look at it, and you're like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. And half the time, neither did the dentist. So you're looking at it, but now you go to the dentist chair, what is it? Sure, they still stick the thing in your cheek. She still hides behind the little wall, but it's developed how quickly? Instantly, right? It happens right away. And not only that, is that x-rays showing up on the 48-inch TV screen that's 3 feet from your face, right? Who ever wants to see their mouth that big? I don't know, right? But then they got little cameras that go in there and they take little pictures of your teeth. So not only do you have the x-ray, but you have video evidence of you can see the stuff you ate last Thursday. It's really kind of horrible, but it's amazing how things have changed. When you look at operations in the physical world, it's improved dramatically. Here's where it gets interesting, though. And here's where it gets relevant for everybody in this room. Customer service in the physical world. Has that changed? Last summer, we took some data. We did a metadata analysis of our information from Retail Track. So Retail Track is a division of our company that does mystery shopping through North America. And it's been around for 23 years. So we went back and we looked at data over the last 23 years to see what's changed. And we pulled out just the core when we think of customer service type things. So, was the person friendly? Were you greeted on time? Those types of things. So we took a look at that to see, has the bar changed in the last 23 years? Guess what? Has not moved. The experience that you have today in a store, the experience you have today in a butcher shop, the experience you have today in a club hasn't changed in 23 years. Isn't that interesting? Think about that. So when we look at that, we've got better, 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 the same. The net is that it's a lot better. So why is it when I ask the question, has customer service gotten better or worse, most of us believe it has gotten worse? And that, by the way, is how most people feel. It's gotten worse. Why is that? Why is it we feel it's gotten worse when actually things have improved so profoundly? Well, a big part of it has to do with our expectations.